Okay, well, welcome everybody. Today we are entering into the home stretch of our accelerated growth intensive. And I noticed we have a smaller class today, and I know at least three people that couldn't be here for sure. And so for the rest of you that are here, I want to thank you for being here. And I do know that for some people, we're getting into the more difficult stretch because this is where you're actually changing your beliefs. But this is the part of the class that matters the most. So I am committed to partnering with you every step of the way because we really want to have you changing your belief system so that you can actually enjoy a difference in your life. So all the stuff that we've done to date is for sure going to help you change your life a little bit. But if you're able to change your scarcity belief, you will radically change your life. And that's what I'm going for with you. So let's go over this a little bit, what we're going to do today. We're going to start with a review of where we're at today, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of where you're all at with your abundance log. And then we're going to do a round robin, and I keep forgetting to change this. My system doesn't remember very well, but we're going to do a round robin, and instead of a Q&A, though, this time, I'm going to be having you share whatever evidence you have. Now, of course, you don't all have evidence, so some of you it'll be just a share or a Q&A or something like that. So the first thing I'm going to start with is just reminding you that where we're at in the class right now, for most people, you should have a puzzle. Now, about 3 members of the class have just started. So for you guys, you want to have trigger logs. When you just start the class, you want to be working for the first couple of weeks on a trigger log. And then we sort of move to identifying your unmet needs. And we work on the empowerment log too a little bit, which helps. The purpose of the empowerment log is to really help you kind of understand that you have some control over getting your needs met. So it gets you a little bit more familiar with your unmet needs. So that's the empowerment log piece. And that happens, let's say, in the 3rd and 4th, maybe up to the 5th week. And then we move to doing your puzzle, which is in the 6th and 7th week and the 8th week. So that's about where we're at right now, is the 8th week. And then starting in the 7th and 8th week is when you have a complete puzzle that feels right, and now you're starting to do the work of changing the belief. And the puzzle is this 5-layered circle model, which I'm beginning to think I should call your survival map or your survival belief map or something like that. So I might rename this. But the idea is that each of you should have this. You should have had a conversation with me about this. And if you don't yet, it's either because you're just not to that place in the program, or maybe you're stuck in some way. So you want to make sure that you schedule a call with me so that we can get this done. For those of you that are just starting, if you schedule a call with me in a couple of weeks, we will get this done for you. So once you have this done, it will be very easy to see what your survival pattern is. And understanding your pattern is an awesome insight because it explains a lot of things that you do repeatedly in life. But having that clarity is only step 1. What we want to do is get you to step 2 and 3 and 4, which is changing things. So you are going to be seduced to work at the top of the puzzle. You want to have a better survival strategy because at this point, you all believe that your survival strategy is the only way to get your needs met. But often, this is the very behavior pattern that's getting in your way in life. So the only way to let go of the survival strategy is not by telling yourself to let go of the survival strategy. It's going down here to what's actually driving the survival strategy and changing that. And the key to that is the scarcity belief. So I want to tell you a little bit more and talk about 2 concepts today that are relevant to this. And here is just a map of where we're at. We're here in our 10-step process. We're basically at step 7, where everybody is working on their abundance law. Okay? And we're going to be stretching out step 7. We're going to be having you work on this until you've shifted. So, there's 5 more weeks to the live class. and I'm going to be asking you to bring in evidence every single week. And then the rest of these steps will happen very naturally once you've made your shift in your abundance law. So I was talking about scarcity. I want a special shout out to Krista for helping me make this model better. She helped me reformat it. So scarcity versus abundance is one of the concepts that we talk about a lot with our needs. So we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how everybody needs an intact needs pyramid in order to survive. And because we need an intact needs pyramid, we build our entire lives, and all of our motivation is surrounded around this pyramid and getting all those needs met. But if we have certain needs that we can't seem to get met, we end up building our whole lives around getting those needs met. And so those are the needs that feel scarce to us. So somewhere in your childhood, you start realizing that you're separate from the rest of the world and that you can't just assume that all your needs are going to be met. So you have to get those needs met. And once you get past the first, fear and panic about all that, then you start thinking consciously about how to get your needs met. So, when you're a young baby, it might be, crying and calling mom or dad over to help you get what you need, but then maybe you learn how to walk or talk and you can articulate what you need, and sometimes you find that you can get some things yourself. So your whole process of childhood is figuring out how to get your needs met and developing strategies. And once you've developed a way to get your needs met, as long as that way is working, you kind of keep doing it. So let's say the way that you get love is you go take somebody that you love and you go give them a hug, and then you get a hug back. And that's really easy for you because you know that there's plenty of people that you could give a hug to and they would hug you right back. So you feel an abundance of love. But let's say that there's something in your childhood that feels really scarce. For example, you just don't feel like people accept you for who you are. It seems like you're getting constantly criticized by your parents, or your brothers or sisters, or something like that. And so now you don't feel so abundant about acceptance. You feel like you have to do something to earn it. And you start feeling scarce about it, and you start trying different things to earn acceptance, and you then develop a survival strategy. So maybe I need to get good grades to be accepted. Maybe I need to behave in a certain way to be accepted. Maybe I need to be a child that's seen and not heard. Maybe I have to do everything right. Maybe I have to be a good girl. Whatever it is. And you start developing your survival strategies. You also start being very suspicious when people give it to you freely. So it's like if you believe that money's scarce and someone comes up to you on the street and offers you $1 million, you're going to go, okay, what's the catch? And that's the same with everything else. If you believe that love is abundant and someone adores you, that's just going to seem very natural and normal to you. But if you believe that love is scarce and someone adores you, you're going to wonder, okay, what do they want from me? They're pretending that they love me to get something from me. So your first thoughts are always going to be to dismiss anything you feel is scarce in the world because you seriously believe that it's scarce, so you block it. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes very hard to get these needs met. Okay? So our goal is to find out what in your psyche created a belief that something was scarce in the world, and we're going to try to unblock this so that the things that are not abundant, you can begin to really receive instead of to distrust and block. So in order to do that, we have to find out what in your psyche is causing you to distrust and block. And what it happens to be is your scarcity belief, which is this part of the puzzle. So in order to identify your scarcity belief, you have to build a puzzle. And most of you will end up building 3, 4, or maybe 5 puzzles as you go through this process because you'll start learning more and more about yourself as you do. But you'll find that all the puzzles relate to each other, and at some point you'll get to a puzzle that kind of connects all of the other puzzles. And it feels really kind of great when you get to that point. But meanwhile, even if you've only done one puzzle, you're going to get a lot of value out of it. So we've talked a lot about the puzzle, but the thing that I did here is I increased the font size quite a bit on the scarcity belief, because this is the thing you have got to hone in on. And your brain is going to keep forgetting your scarcity belief, which is why I asked you to write it down at the top of your abundance log. Write down your scarcity belief and write it down so it's very clear what the condition is. So I was just talking to somebody earlier today, and their condition was that other people won't give me this thing. So it wasn't that that I have to do something. There wasn't an unless or an obvious if there. So we had to think about it a little bit. And often, if you think about your scarcity belief, if it isn't written like a condition, if you think about it for a little while, you can figure out what the condition is. And so in that particular example, I looked at it for a while and I thought that the condition probably is other people won't do this unless I convince them that I'm worth their time, or unless I can convince them that I am good enough, or whatever it is. So there's usually an if or an unless or something, because you're desperate to figure out how to get a little bit of this thing that's scarce. So your mind is going to identify what condition can I get a little bit of this, right? So if you're short on air, which is one of your most basic needs, and you're having a hard time breathing, your brain is going to be frantically going, where can I get air? In what circumstance can I get air? If I can get my nose above water, I'll be able to suck in a little bit of air, right? If I can't get water, well, if I boil the ocean water, then I can get water. So your brain is looking for what circumstance can get me even a little tiny bit of what I need, because you're going to be desperate for everything. And that includes the higher level needs, love and belonging and status. So once you've identified your scarcity belief, and it might not be your only scarcity belief, but once you've identified a scarcity belief, changing that scarcity belief is key to everything. So one of the techniques I use is the you aren't that special technique. Because once you've identified your scarcity belief, then typically what you're going to be able to do is you're going to have a logical sentence that says, I can only get love or acceptance, or I can only be valued, or I'm only worthy if, and then whatever it is that you have to do. You have to be a star, you have to, jump through hoops, but whatever it is, you're jumping through hoops. And one way to begin to change your thinking is, and which is what we started you on last time with those 3 questions, is to expand out and rethink, how do other people get this, right? So if we know your scarcity belief, it basically says, I can't get X, I can't get enough of X because of Y, right? Or unless, so then there's some condition. So we say, how do other people in love and life get X? How do other people get love? How are other people valued? How are other people worthy? How do other people experience harmonious life? How do other people feel good about themselves? How do other people get motivated? So whatever it is, how do other people do it? How do other people get it? And so that's kind of your first step, is looking for other people that seem to have a lot of this thing that you don't believe you have, and seeing how they get it. And if you can figure out how they get it, and most of you have shown me some evidence of that, a lot of people have, I'm not valuable, right? So you don't feel valued or worthy by others, but you can certainly identify other people in the world that you believe are valuable and worthy. So then the question is, well, how do those people get to be valuable or worthy? And a lot of times you're like, well, they're not jumping through hoops to be valuable and worthy. They're just being themselves. And they're not perfect. In fact, sometimes they make huge mistakes, but for some reason they're still valuable or worthy. That's important thinking. That's a really important observation. And the reason it's an important observation is because it provides a way for your brain to go, oh, well, if other people are getting this, maybe it's not as scarce as I thought it was. Because the only reason it can be scarce for me and not others is if I'm super special, super unique. I'm the only person in the whole world that needs to jump through hoops in order to be valued. And I did have someone in one of the groups that I facilitated said, yeah, no, the rules that apply to everybody else do not apply to me. And she was certain of that. Everybody else can do whatever they want in the world, but I am not allowed to. So she was really stuck in the I'm special, I'm different, and couldn't convince her otherwise. So that's her big thing that she's got to jump through. But for most of us, as soon as we start observing this, we aren't stuck in I'm extremely special. Most of us are not stuck in that paradigm. So because we're not stuck in a paradigm that we're so different from everybody else in the world, when we start seeing how everybody else in the world gets the thing that we need, maybe by just being themselves, our belief starts to change a little bit. So that's why I ask you to keep collecting evidence of other people in the world that are getting this. Because if they're getting it in a certain way, maybe you can try that way too and get more of it. And that's an experiment that you can begin to have. And you're not going to feel comfortable at first, but as you start doing it and getting positive results, your experiential learning will help change your beliefs. You can't just do this all in your head, which is why we have, several more weeks for the class. You have to be experiencing it. Okay? So the way to begin to change your thinking is to kind of expand out, rethink how normal people who life in the world. I always notice my mistakes when I'm on the recording, get this need met. And then try to collect a lot of examples about how they get the need met. So I had somebody send their homework and they told me who was valuable, but they hadn't quite gotten to how those people became valuable. They kind of had an idea of it, but expect yourself to be a little bit fuzzy because basically you're walking your brain through a relearning process, and your brain's going to be kind of reluctant and fuzzy in the beginning, just like you're learning a new skill. But then as you keep showing your brain new things, then it's like, oh, wow, okay, this makes sense. I'm catching on. All right, so lots of examples on how other people get the need met, and write it down. And then challenge yourself every time you hear yourself saying, well, yeah, for them it's easy because ABC, but for me it's not because XYZ. And then you can say, well, really, really, Nahid, are you special? Are you that special? So that's a really good technique that you can use to help you start changing your paradigm. So just to give you another look at what the abundance log looks like. The abundance log is much, much simpler than all of the other logs. It doesn't have a lot of columns. It just has 2 columns, and the date column, I would argue, is not even very significant. But essentially, you're just listing evidence. Okay? You're listing any kind of observation that you make in the world, any kind of experience that you have in the world that tells you, is there another way for me to get X? Am I really restricted to only being able to get X if I jump through all these hoops? And the hoops are the hoops of your scarcity belief. It's the condition of your scarcity belief. Okay? So I repeated these 3 questions because I know many of you asked me if I could email them or whatever, but we just talked about the first of these 3 questions. So these are the kind of 3 questions that help you start guiding your search for evidence. First, pay attention to other people who have an abundance of whatever it is. Gather as many examples as you can. And then you have to ask yourself, if they're not jumping through hoops to get this, how are they getting it? How are they getting to be valued in the world? How do they get to be worthy in the world? How do they get love in the world? How do they get acceptance? How come they get to be themselves? Right? So why did they get it? And just observe that. Just write lists of any observations that you can make. The observations might not even make complete sense to you, but think of yourself as a scientist gathering data. The data doesn't always make sense as you're gathering it. Your mind will start making connections once you've gathered a lot of data. Okay? Now, there were two other ways that I told you to guide your thinking. One is to pay attention to what makes you decide to give this to others. So, if you value others, do you only value them because they're jumping through all these hoops? You know, if you accept and not judge others, do you do it because, you know, they're perfect? Do you only accept people who are perfect in the world? And that helps sometimes. Now, some people will find that they do judge others and expect them to jump through all the same hoops. So sometimes this line of questioning won't help them find new evidence. But for many people, just like you have some people where number one won't work because they truly believe that they're special and different from everyone else in the world. For some people, number two won't work very well because they truly do judge everybody else by the same standards that they judge themselves, and they don't accept themselves or anyone else when they don't. Like, I think one person in class told me, well, you know, I don't accept people if they don't pull their own weight, and I don't accept myself if I don't pull my own weight either. If I'm not a hard worker and I don't work my butt off, then I'm not valuable. And if they're not a hard worker and they don't work their butt off, then they're not valuable. So in that case, this line of questioning isn't going to work. But most of you will notice that you have a double standard. Most of you will notice that you judge yourself much more harshly than you judge other people. And the hoops that you expect yourself to jump through to achieve whatever it is that you find to be scarce in the world, you don't hold others to that same standard, and you freely give it to other people without expecting them. So learning what conditions you put on other people in order to give them this will help you change your belief. Because if you don't give it to other people by making them jump through the hoops, then why would other people make you jump through the hoops to give it to you? For me, I always use the putting myself in other people's shoes to help me change my beliefs and my paradigms, and it's very helpful. Number three here, you can look at times in your own past when you have received some of what you need. So this is a really good one because this puts you back into the puzzle. And it says, you know, you could get away from number one by saying, well, I'm special. And you can get away from number two by saying, well, I judge everybody else the same way I judge me. But number three is a little bit harder to get away from because if you actually make notes of and write a list of examples of when you have actually gotten the thing that you need, and this is sort of what your empowerment laws helps with a little bit, when you start going, when did I get this need met? You know, when did I feel valued in my life? And you force yourself to remember times when you actually did feel valued or accepted or loved. And then you take it a step further and say, well, why did they really value me or accept me or love me in that moment? And sort of rethink that, kind of remember it the way you think it actually happened. That can be very powerful because you can go, wow, in my past, when people have been friends with me, they haven't been friends with me because I impressed them. They were friends with me because I listened to them or some other such thing. Okay? So those are the three kind of things to begin your exploration, to kind of get you going in the right direction. They're not the only three questions to ask yourself, but they're questions you can ask yourself that will lead you to evidence that will help you loosen the belief. What will happen once you get yourself started is that momentum will take over and you'll start noticing all sorts of things. You'll start noticing times during your day when you're getting this need and you dismissed it. And you'll go, and you'll stop yourself from dismissing it and you'll receive it. And then your evidence has to build up. It has to reach critical mass. I was thinking about having us do a challenge where we all have to come up with 100 pieces of evidence, because I thought maybe once we come up with 100 pieces of evidence, then we would change the belief. I can't tell you how many pieces of evidence it is because I've never done that before, but the general idea is you have to go through a learning process before your beliefs actually change. And the learning process includes both observation and experiences. Okay? So now we're going to do a round robin. I'm going to turn off the recording. And for those of you who are in the live class, I'd like to just go around and I'm going to give you an option. So if you've had an opportunity to share, to write down some evidence, and that evidence has been kind of compelling to you, feel free to share it. Don't share every little thing because that will take a lot of time, but share maybe one insight that was very helpful to you. If you haven't gotten to that point yet, you're welcome to either share any kind of insight that's been helpful to you so far in the class, or number 3, ask me a question and I'll address it on the call as we're here, okay? So I'm going to go in the same order that I always go in, and I know that some people aren't here today, so if people aren't here, I'll be jumping over them. So this is the order. I'll be going Angela, Patty, Sandra's not here today, so then after Patty it'll be Krista, Valerie, Karen. I don't know that Karen's here today either, so then it'll be Erin. Manora's not here, Lucinda's not here, so after Erin will be Ava if she's here, and then Vicki, and then Christina and Ellen and Frank. So again, that's the order, but you may come up earlier than you think because the person before you might not be here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording, and then we'll do a round robin. And then for those of you that are listening to the recording, I'll jump back on as soon as I'm done. So I'm back, and we've had a round robin, and we've had a great discussion, and just about everybody's jumped off the call now. But I just wanted to get back on for everyone that was listening to the recording, and just remind you that if you've been in the class for a while, you should have your puzzle done by now. And if you don't have your puzzle done by now, you want to make an appointment with me to make sure that you get your puzzle done. If you're one of the 3 students that just started, you should be working on your trigger log for the next 2 weeks or so. I also may not have a class on September 4th, and I will let you know. And that's because I'm going to be on vacation that week. So if I don't have a class, it's just going to be a makeup. But I may have a class. I may do a video recording. I'm just not going to decide until the last minute what I'm going to do. However, either way, what you're going to be doing for the next 2 weeks is, if you're not at the beginning of the process doing your trigger log, what you're doing now is collecting evidence. And we talked on the call about 100-person challenge, 100 pieces of evidence. And we talked about how good that is to kind of have that as a goal, to keep collecting evidence, because once you collect the evidence, things start changing. Okay? So thanks again for listening to this, and we will connect with you again soon. Bye-bye.